Welcome back, Whisky fans. December the 17th apparently. I don't know where all the time's gone, but the calendar tells me that that is the day that we are currently on. Let's have another dram. Definitely easier to get the drams out of this calendar compared to the Master of Malt. There's been far less aggressive box shaking than there has in previous years. A little bit fruity, perhaps a little bit soapy. Is that my hands I can smell? No. What have we got today then? A little bit darker than the Craigellachie yesterday. Oh, similar actually. Slightly darker, perhaps. So not quite as bright as yesterday's Craigellachie, and I do like bright and sharp whiskies. But this smells pretty good as well. It smells sherried, but it's more of a slightly cloying, sweet, and slightly fudgy sherry. But again, like the Craigellachie yesterday, I said that Craigellachie was all about those sweet, juicy, appley, malty notes, but it had that nice counterpoint of the tannic apple peel and slightly more mineral side to it. I think that the same with this one. It's got lots of sweet sherry, sweet fudgy sherry, but it's got a little bit of a hard, maybe slightly mineral, possibly even slightly salty, or slightly sulphury perhaps note. So it's a sherried whiskey that's got a bit of character. Sweet, raisins, caramel, fudge, slightly spicy, slightly salty, perhaps a tiny little hint of sulphuriness. Let's see how it tastes. From the palate alone, I would guess probably 43%. I don't think it's got quite the oomph that the Craigellachie had. And quite a predictable palate, I think. I think that soapy note is coming back. Oh, it's had a little bit of time to air and open up. Getting a little hint of soapiness on the nose. I would say not the most interesting not the most interesting whiskey on the palate. I think it really is very predictable. It's got a little bit of sherry, perhaps a little bit of like cocoa, and a little bit of spiciness, and a little bit of bitter oak, possibly some European oak gone into there. But it's very, there's not many flavours that stand out on the palate. It's rounded and fudgy, a little bit caramel, a little bit of milk chocolate, sort of dried fruits. Reminds me a little bit of, I like it more, but it reminds me a little bit of things like Dalmore 12. It's got that dark sherry profile to it. And possibly the fact that I don't think this is 46%. It seems a little bit It's not 40%, but it doesn't seem like it's quite 46. So like a Dalmore, but slightly better. So I don't think that this one is going to come in that high on the leaderboard. It's been a while since I've put anything anywhere on the leaderboard apart from the top, so I'm quite glad that we've got this. It's a little bit of a sanity check for me that we've got a whiskey which is not fantastic. And that's probably a bit mean, depending on what it is. If it's a Dalmore, then screw it. Definitely getting a little bit more floral on the nose though. A little bit of a soap powder note. Floral flowers. Amongst that sherry that was there right in there on the early aroma. So yeah, a sherried whiskey that's got that little bit of character, but not quite enough to bring it in at the top of the leaderboard. So, distilleries that this could be. There aren't that many of them. It's like Dalmore, Mortlach is kind of similar. Like slightly dry, slightly spicy, characterful sherry. Tamdhu, perhaps a Glenrothes, like a Glenrothes that's seen a lot of more European oak than they normally put in a Glenrothes. I would say potentially Macallan, but anything that's cheap enough to go into this Advent calendar is going to be low strength, so probably not. So where are we going on the leaderboard? Going to be looking at the bottom half. I don't like it as much as the Auchroisk that we had. I think that's a bit better. What about the Clan Denny? I kind of enjoy that more, to be honest. I don't know, I think between those two, I think this one's going to be in between the Clan Denny and the Parkmore Auchroisk. So what have we got? It is a Tamdhu. So Tamdhu was one of the 5 or 6 that I was thinking of. Tamdhu 12-year-old, is that 43%? It is 43%. Tamdhu. So that's probably about where I expected Tamdhu to be. So a little bit better than your Clan Denny and your Tomatin. This is the Tomatin. Yeah, Tomatin 12, it's another entry level single malt, isn't it? Another entry level 43% 12-year-old single malt, so kind of makes sense that that's about where it is. Tamdhu is a distillery that I think has potential, but it doesn't quite gel with me. It's not a distillery that I've ever really loved, and it doesn't help that their 12-year-old whiskey is bottled at 43%. And it also doesn't help that I think a lot of the better Tamdhus are a bit more expensive than they should be. I did have a dram of the Tamdhu batch strength fairly recently, and I thought that was okay, but probably, again, a little bit too expensive, and potentially not quite as mature as I'd want it to be. So yeah, Tamdhu coming in at probably about, well, just under halfway on the leaderboard. So not a bad position, but must try harder. Not a bad malt though. Not disappointed with that. See you again tomorrow when we can see if we can find another whiskey that's going to be an absolute pain to fit in that clump of really good whiskies at the top of the leaderboard. Thanks for watching, see you tomorrow, and cheers.